Good evening, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Fort Wayne Community Schools Board of Trustees. We begin each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And roll call of members.
Good evening, Steve Corona from the 5th District.
Good evening, Tom Smith, 3rd District.
Maria Norman, member at large.
Ann Duff, member at large.
Jordan Lebamoff, the 4th District.
And I am Julie Hollingsworth, elected from District 1. And my far left is Janet Doherty, the clerk of the board. Good evening. And our superintendent, Dr. Wendy Robinson.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we begin with awards and recognitions. And this is a pretty significant and big night for awards and recognitions because we are going to recognize the Fort Wayne Community Schools Teacher of the Year and finalists. It's recommended that the board recognize the teachers who were finalists for the 2018-19 Fort Wayne Community School Teacher of the Year. Each year, principals nominate a teacher for the coveted Fort Wayne Community School Teacher of the Year selection. A committee composed of Fort Wayne Community School employees narrows the large number of nominees to a smaller group of finalists who are then individually interviewed by the committee and a winner chosen. With so many outstanding teachers in Fort Wayne Community Schools, this is a very difficult process, and we would like to recognize the finalists for the fine work they are doing educating our students. So please come forward as your name is read so that we may congratulate you. Stephanie Apt from Memorial Park, along with Principal Brad Crozier.
Want to get a picture at a time or everybody?
Anybody want to jump up and take a picture?
We'll get everybody together.
Okay. Scott Freeman, Kikianga Middle School, along with Matt Schiebel, principal. What is that? Justin, is it Herring? Horing. Justin Horing, Blackhawk Middle School. And Kara Froning, principal. Phyllis Baster, Weiser Park Elementary School. And Kent Martz, principal.
Okay.
Did I get that one right? Okay. Scooch.
You want one? Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank
We
you.
partied upstairs beforehand.
Yes, congratulations to all the finalists. That's particularly when, you know, you are judged by your colleagues. That's an outstanding honor. It's now recommended that the board recognize Career Academy at Anthus teacher Karen Gilly as the district's 2018-19 Teacher of the Year. Karen Gilly is a graphic design instructor at the Fort Wayne Community School Career Academy at Anthus. She was selected as our Teacher of the Year because of her passion for doing what is best for students and ensuring the skills they learn in class are relevant to a career outside the classroom. She relates especially well to her students because she was once in their seats as a Career Academy student. Her experience led her to value hands-on experiences as part of the learning process. She believes when students see the relevancy in what they are learning, it inspires a genuine passion for learning. Her students frequently work with businesses in the community to develop logos and marketing materials, and that includes some of the schools at Fort Wayne Community Schools. She goes out of her way to ensure students have real-world experiences that not only provide hands-on learning, but they also open doors for students entering the workforce before and after graduation. With 25 years of teaching experience, Ms. Gilly is dedicated to continuously learning best practices and improving her skills so she can do what is best for students, focusing on relationships, relevance, and rigor to best prepare students for future success. As one of her students said after she was named Fort Wayne Community School Teacher of the Year, she changes lives. Ms. Gilly, we are honored to have you as part of the district. And Principal Jesse Webb, if you would please join us.
Hold on a second. Larry, get up here. You shouldn't have come to the reception. Just a second, we're gonna get Larry. Jesse doesn't mind sharing. You understand my. He retired, but he doesn't understand that.
It keeps coming back. Okay, now, and by the way, if anyone would like to leave, because I know teachers and staff and families certainly have important things to do, it will not bother us one bit. So thank you for joining in the celebration, and have a good evening.
Yes.
I made sure the students had more than one cupcake.
Okay, next on our agenda is the consent agenda, and these are items that come to us every meeting. They include the approval of the minutes of the last meeting that was held on September 10th, and board members have already seen that to review. They include vouchers and payroll approval, vouchers for the period ending September 24th, and payroll for the period ending August 31st. And board members have also received that information, as well as the personnel report. And board members have seen that. So do we have a motion in a second?
Yep, I'd recommend approval of the 3 items contained within the consent agenda, Madam Chair.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Jordan. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Dr. Robinson, was there anything on the personnel report that you wanted to highlight?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have some new business. The first is the Compassionate St. Joseph Award Grant. It's recommended that the board approve the acceptance of a Compassionate St. Joseph Award Grant from the St. Joseph Community Health Foundation for a full-time nurse to serve the students and staff in our Center for Academic Success programs. Great. In addition to increasing basic school nursing service, improving the well-being of our staff and students would be one of the primary objectives of this grant. Nursing services will use a trauma-informed approach and brain-aligned best practices that build resilience and self-care strategies for those in this school setting. This grant is for $100,000 paid over 3 years. This competitive grant, written by Mary Hess, Director of Health and Wellness, supports Fort Wayne Community School Goal 1, achieve and maintain academic excellence through safe and supportive schools. And questions will be addressed by Mary Hess, Director of Health and Wellness. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Steve. Any questions?
What are brain-aligned best practices?
Hello, I wish I was the best person to answer this, but I'll do my best as a nurse. Many in the district have been working on restorative practices, and the brain-aligned techniques are part of that. And that's that kids that have a lot of trauma in their lives often have an upset neurological system, and in order to be ready to learn, that needs to be reset. And so I think nurses are in a really good position to help kids identify what's going on in their body and maybe use some of the relaxation and reset techniques so they can get in there and do what they really need to do, learn. So did I give you the Reader's Digest version?
Thank you.
Sure.
Mary, it sounds like the assignment, the nurse or nurses at this site will be a little different than what our other school nurses do.
They are hoping to probably add a little more time in their schedule to health and wellness for our students and for our staff members. It's a stressful place to work in sometimes, and it's good for our staff to also be ready to have students come in for the day. And I think they could really do some more intensive interventions around that wellness piece for both staff and students.
Now, does this pay for, what, 50% of the salary and benefits?
The grant is 3 tiers. It pays almost the entire salary the first year and then a portion the second and third. And I hope we can collect some good data on how this really impacts our students and staff, kind of learn something from it.
Okay.
Thank
And do
you.
we have that, have we staffed that yet, or?
The grant actually won't be announced. The winner won't be announced until December 1st. I've applied for that. We get funds in January and could stage from there.
Okay.
But I think we're going to have a work session on this total topic, because it's, the topics are part of our positive behavior supports for students, the readiness to learn side of the pyramid. So one of those dates that we have down, we'll just have this total presentation. Faye is right now working with GET, and that's a part of their responsibility, along with Tracy, because there's the academic part. And then we'll just talk about this, too, as it relates to the total strategy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Mary. Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we have an application for the Common School Fund loan. It's recommended that the board approve the application for and acceptance of an advancement from the Indiana Common School Fund for educational technology equipment in the amount of $1,950,000. Advancements from the Common School Fund provide funds for school districts to purchase educational technology. Fort Wayne Community Schools will use these funds to help fund the Fort Wayne Community School Technology Plan previously submitted to the state. Technology funds are currently insufficient to fund all the technology needs of the school corporation. Funds are provided as a loan and are awarded to school corporations on the basis of assessed value per pupil, with low assessed value per pupil corporation receiving funds before high assessed value per pupil corporations. Fort Wayne Community Schools therefore cannot be assured of receiving the requested advancement. Should the application be successful, funds will be budgeted in the debt service fund to repay this loan beginning in the year 2020. Interest on the loan is expected to be no more than 4% and is likely to be as low as 1%. Common School Fund advancements differ from school technology advancement account loans, which Fort Wayne Community School receives on an annual basis. Unlike CSF advancements, the school technology advancements are given to all applying school corporations regardless of their assessed value per pupil ranking. Questions will be addressed by Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend and Director of Technology Jack Bird. So do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Steve. Any questions?
Do we have an intended purpose for this? I know it says to buy technology, but is there a specific purchase? Hi, Jack.
Yes. With this particular one, this is going to be what we use for the second part of our 3-year plan for one-to-one. So we will be buying Lenovo 11E laptops for students. And this one will also fund our staff replacement plan out in buildings. And then we always have audio-visual allocated for this.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Jack. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, next we have the second semester 2017-18 extracurricular reports. This big document right here, which covers all of the money received and expended by extracurricular accounts for every school as required by Indiana Code. A report of the sources of all receipts, the purposes for which money was expended, and the balance on hand is required to be filed with the School Board of Trustees. All extracurricular semester reports were audited by the business office. The general ledger summary report of each school's accounts is provided. All extracurricular records are maintained for 5 years and available for inspection. Questions will be addressed by Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend. We have a motion, second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Maria. Any questions? Okay. All those in favor of accepting these reports signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so that brings us to the end of our new business. And so now, as required by law, we will have the 2019 budget report. Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend will present a report that describes the 2019 budgets for the new funds that we'll have: the education fund, the operation fund, and then our 3 debt funds: debt service, referendum debt, and pension bond. The public budget hearings will be held on October 8th, 2018, during our regularly scheduled meeting. And then the board action is scheduled for these budgets on October 22nd, 2018. And so members all should have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. Good evening.
Thank you,
Kathy.
President Hollingsworth, school board members, and Dr. Robinson. Tonight, I will present to you the 19th budget that I have presented to this school board, so can't believe that much time has gone by. It's been way different every year. I also slipped a notice to taxpayers in your folder so that you will know what is out on the state's website today. We went ahead, we posted it today. The presentation says it's being posted tomorrow, but I wanted you to have it. And I know this is sort of cryptic here, where I made handwritten notes on here, but I wanted you to see how you transition from this notice to the presentation I'm making tonight. Okay, so I'll refer to it once in a while, because what we're required to provide to the state ultimately turns into a different answer when we go through the process with them. So I wanted to make sure you knew what the differences are. So, okay, we can go ahead. The agenda tonight is just to talk about the state budget requirements, the revenue budgets, and then what the new expenditure budgets look like, and then we'll have some key takeaways at the end. So the budget calendar is just a little bit different. Tomorrow, as I said, we would have the budget advertised on Gateway. It's actually out there tonight. So, and at the end of the presentation, I have the website that folks can go to find the advertisement. And then on the 26th, we have to advertise in the newspaper. Now we just advertise a notice, not the actual capital projects plan and bus replacement plan. So that's a little bit different. We're just advertising a notice that they can go to the FWCS website and find the plan now. So that helps save a little money because the ad's not quite as big, but it does require that taxpayers would have to go look for it on our website. And then the public hearing will be on October the 8th, and adoption of budget by October 22nd. There is a statutory deadline of November 1st, so we need to get that done on October 22nd. And then the state is now required to issue a budget order by January 1st, and that used to be February 15th. So they've really moved things up. So they'll have to work quicker to get that done in time, because usually we're right up against the February 15th date.
Kathy, what's that mean? A budget order?
Well, what happens is after you finish your work, then the state reviews everything that we did and makes sure that we did it properly, that we did our notices on time, that our revenue estimates make sense, and the whole process that we have to go through to determine what the tax rate is. They make sure every one of those components is correct, and then they certify a budget order. So they have to do that for all funds individually and for all units of government in the state. So it's quite a process they go through. So the board will have certain items it will approve, and these are pretty typical of what you've done in the past. The bus replacement plan's a little different because in the past you approved a 12-year replacement plan. Now you only approve 5 years of the 12-year replacement plan. It's still a 12-year replacement plan, but now you only approve 5 years of it. And then the capital projects plan used to be the entire capital projects fund, which since that fund goes away, now it's only items that are in that portion of the budget that exceed $10,000. So you'll have a separate document that you'll approve for that. And then there are some items that will be related to the new fund changes, and so I'll talk about those when we're in that section. So these are the changes that you'll have to make for the fund changes. So there's a resolution that you have to approve to create both of the new funds. And you'll notice that there's orange and purple words in here. The orange words are for the education fund and the purple for operations, and that's going to continue on the next few slides, so you can kind of keep that separate in your mind. You will also have to approve a transfer of the cash balances to the new funds. So since the capital projects fund goes away, we have to move that money into the operations fund. So we have to do that by March 1st of 19, when we know what those balances are. And then you will also have to do a resolution to make transfers from the education fund to the operations fund as needed. And the purpose of that is currently the general fund funds a lot of things that include education components as well as operational components. And since those operational components are going to move, we'll need to move money to go with those operational components. So that's what that's about. So this is to kind of show you what's happened with the revenue. We have two major components of revenue in the two funds, in the new funds. One is the state tuition support, and the other one is the local property tax dollars. So currently, state tuition support dollars go into the general fund, and now they will go into the education fund instead. All of the local property taxes went into these funds that are listed there under former fund, and now they will all go into the operations fund. And then you can see on the right-hand side, I'm saying a portion of that education fund would be transferred then into the operations fund in order to pay for those expenses. So for instance, the majority of GRILE is paid for out of the general fund currently, but will be paid for out of the operations fund in the future. So part of that money that was formerly general fund will need to come to pay for the operations of the district. Now, one of our difficulties is that we don't collect all of the property taxes that we are allowed to ask for. So this chart is depicting the losses that we have had for the circuit breaker. And so the chart is showing negative numbers on there. So what you can see is the negative numbers are getting bigger. The losses have been getting bigger. It kind of peaked out in 2015 at $7.9 million and actually has improved a little bit since then. And that's because assessed value has grown in our community. So that's a positive thing. I do want you to note, though, on your notice to taxpayers, one of the things that's on there is property tax credit estimate. And this is something the state cooked up a number for what they thought that estimate should be. And they used $11 million. Okay, can you see that on your chart? 11,153,000. So that's not an accurate estimate of what the circuit breaker will be, so we certainly didn't use that in our estimates. If we had, that meant we would have had to cut a lot of places in order to consider that we weren't going to get $11 million. We believe that number to be more around $6.5 million. So in consulting with the state and with the county auditor, the direction I was given is use the number you're comfortable with. So the number I'm going to say I'm comfortable with is $6.5 million, but a taxpayer would see this and say our loss is $11 million, and that's unfortunate that they do it that way. It's very meaningless information. So anyhow, so so the changes that are happening to our budget. Wait a minute, I feel like. Hang on, Rosie. We're skipping. We're not in order here. We're missing.
Yeah.
We're missing the revenue, the education fund.
Pages 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah. Hang on a second. I thought that's why when this one came up, I thought, wait, something's. I'm sorry. Hang on a second.
The last one you had was
No problem.
primary revenue sources.
Yeah, that's.
And then the next one should have been tuition support components.
Yeah. That's what.
Slide 8.
It threw me off there for a second. It's like every other. She's gonna, if you just give us a second, we'll pull up the, we brought our safety net just in case.
Let's have a backup.
Yeah. I actually went through this afternoon, so I'm,
While she's waiting, I want the audience to know that.
Are there
board
two
members
different
can-
versions? Your slide 7 is different than our slide 7.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is board members take the time to come in and meet with Kathy and go through extensive examinations. So this is not the first time board members have
Right.
seen this. As a matter of fact, over the years, they have given advice as to what makes sense in terms of the public who doesn't work with this all the time. So I just wanted to acknowledge, it takes quite a bit of time, and Kathy and I both appreciate that.
So there's no longer going to be a separate Museum of Art fund?
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
But we're still allowed to do that pass-through?
Yeah, why don't we, while we're waiting for this, why don't we just talk about that for a second? It's a small fund, it's only about $142,000. But the way that fund worked is that the funding, they had its own fund in the past. There was a property tax rate raised for just that fund. And then the money flowed through there. We turned around and we wrote a check to the Museum of Art so that they would get the funds that they should get. Well, when the state did the combination of the funds, they threw the art museum fund into the operations fund. So now it's sort of buried in there. And what I'm going to ask the board to do is to pass a resolution that defines how we will compute what it is that the art museum will get in the
Okay.
future.
Okay.
Because we need to take into consideration what their current allowed amount is, less what circuit breaker should be attributed to them.
Yeah.
And so.
What was
Are
the
we back?
calculation
Okay.
on that amount in years past for the art museum?
About the same,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, what was that?
About 142,000.
And how did we get to that number?
Because there was a rate that was raised.
Right.
And so so we would ask to collect, actually it was a little bit more than that. It was say about 160,000 we were allowed to ask for. And then with the circuit breaker taken out of it, there was like about 140-some thousand left over.
So you're going to apply that same rate?
Yes.
Moving forward?
Right. What we'll do is we'll use 2018 as the base, year, we know what the growth factor is that the state applies to the property tax fund. So we'll just sort of pretend that that fund still exists within the operation fund, and we'll have a formula that tells you all how we calculated it, so we are fair with what the art museum's provided.
So after you leave the district, you're going to leave somebody a note about how
Yeah,
to calculate that?
nope, you'll have it memorialized. We'll put it in a policy or
Well, Steve, you'll
whatever.
still be here, you can tell us.
Doing number 38, yeah.
I wouldn't be able to.
So, do other districts do this, or is this unique to Fort Wayne Community
There are
Schools?
other districts that have this art museum fund. I'm not sure how they've decided to handle it.
Okay.
It's just very unique, and we really ask legislators, don't do that. Don't put that fund in the operations fund, because I think that muddies things up.
Right.
But we did not win that battle, so anyhow.
Okay.
I just think it's important that we really recognize that that is not FWCS's money.
Right,
That's not what the intent is.
Right.
So, yeah.
so now we should be ready
We
for.
recovered.
Number 8.
Thank you, Rosie. Okay, so now we're talking about revenue. Go back to the slide just before, so now you kind of get where I was coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go.
We got it.
Now we're going to talk about state tuition support. Okay. So the state tuition support components are foundation and complexity. And every district in the state gets the same amount of foundation revenue. So in 17-18, that amount is $5,273. That is already increased by the state budget to be $5,352 this year, a 1.5% increase. So the difficulty that we have when we're putting together a 2019 calendar year budget is we don't know what the revenue is going to be for the second half of 19, because that has not been decided yet, and it won't be decided until the legislative session. So we have to make estimates for that. Same issue with the complexity formula. The complexity formula, though, is different for every school district, and it's dependent upon basically the poverty or the complexity of a school district. And the state currently uses a direct certified rate. So this is a rate that the state has determined that families are eligible for benefits. And so that could be food stamps, it could be that they're homeless, it could be that they are on Medicaid. So each one of those things adds into that formula, and ours is 34.05%. Now, you might think back in the day when the complexity rate was 70% because it was based on free and reduced lunch. So they changed that. Now they use this rate. So it's not that our poverty went down, it's just that not everybody that's on free and reduced lunch is certified by the state for additional benefits. So when they changed the rate, they also changed the multiplier, but not by enough to make up the difference. So, and I'll show you that in a second. So we get $1,205 per pupil based on that rate. Now, if our certified rate changes, if it goes up or if it goes down, that number would also change. So the assumption is, for purposes of the budget, that it'll stay the same for 18-19. And again, we don't really know what the second half of 19 is yet. So this chart shows you the combination of those two over some time, some history there for you. The red bar shows you the total for both of those components, and the blue line shows you the foundation. And the foundation has grown $569 since 13-14, about a 12% increase. And I'll note that in 13-14, I did restate those two to include kindergarten, because kindergarten used to be outside the foundation, and now it's inside the foundation. So I'm trying to give you an apples-to-apples presentation here. But they increased that foundation really on the backs of the complexity portion of the formula. So Fort Wayne Community Schools has lost $502 of complexity revenue since 13-14, and that's a 29% decline in that portion of the formula. So all in all, our total revenue increased $67 since 13-14, or 1% over all those years. So that is not good. That is not a...
Do we know what the CPI is over those years from 13-14?
I did not
Consumer
come armed
Price
with
Index?
that, but I'm sure it's higher than 1% total. I can check that out for you. So school districts that have low poverty made out fairly well in the way this formula worked. But those with high poverty saw a reduction in that component. So the net effect was more harmful to districts with high poverty. So the next slide shows you the property tax portion of this revenue equation. And so what the state does is they start with what our maximum allowed levy was for 2018, and then they have a growth factor that they apply to that. And this year's growth factor was 3.4% for 1 year. So what that tells you is it's kind of crazy that this part of the formula goes up 3.4% when the other part goes up 1.5% for the foundation part. So, of course, this is property tax dollars, so this is local property tax dollars, not state dollars that are affected by this. Then we have to reduce this by 2 factors. One is the tax cap loss, that's the revenue we're not going to collect because of the circuit breaker. And then the other one is pension bond tax neutrality, and that is back in 2005-ish, the district had to do a pension bond in order to be compliant with a new state requirement that said we had to be actuarially sound on these severance benefits that the district was paying. We no longer pay for those benefits, but we had to take a pension bond out at the time. So we have to repay that pension bond every year until 2022. The repayment, the loan payment is $3.3 million a year, but it couldn't affect taxpayers. It could not affect tax bills. So we have to cut $3.3 million somewhere else in order to be compliant with that rule. So all in all, we'll only collect about $43.5 million instead of the $53.3 million.
So geez, it's 3 or 4 years now. After we're done paying pension bond, will that money then be allowed to be spent on general operation expenses?
Whatever our decision is at the time. Yep. So now, Darren is in the room, and he will tell you he wants to spend it on capital projects.
You already got it spent?
He's one of the ones that's, we've actually cut the capital projects fund $2 million every year, really, as part of that. And then transportation was hit with the other piece of it. So not to say that's how we would have to replenish it, but that's what we've done. That's how we've handled it in the past. So, but that'll have to be a decision that we need to work through. So now, this is I've already discussed this, but so here's the history for the circuit breaker. We can probably go past that. Oh, and yeah, and I showed you on the notice where that was. Actually, I'm sorry, Rosie, will you go back to slide 10 again? I want to show the board. Okay, so if you go back to your notice to taxpayers, now note the very bottom of the page, we see my handwritten note there, 43,801,464, and I circled it and I put slide 10. So the reconciliation of that is you take the number up above, you'll notice in operations number 1 there, where I had a number 1, 58,631 is what's posted on the legal ad, but we really are only going to collect 43,501. So part of the process that we go through with the state is you overestimate what you think the levy is going to be, because you want to make sure you've done it accurately, because you know it's going to be adjusted when you get to the hearing. So I wanted you to know this is what the intended number will be, is the 43,501. Okay, you can go forward a couple. Okay, so this is the total revenue for both of these new funds, the education fund and the operations fund, compared to 2018. So we're estimating about a 2% increase over last year, and that considers that, one part of the formula went up 3.4% and the other part went up 1.5%. So on average, about a 2% increase. And keep in mind, we had to make estimates about the second half of 19, so that's what that adds to. So now we'll flip over to the expenditure budgets. And I believe I showed this picture last year. So what has happened is that the blue buckets, which is where the former spending was for all school districts, now will get spent out of the red buckets. So I've got green arrows that show you which buckets which blue buckets go into the operations fund, and I have 2 black arrows that show you buckets that go into the education fund. So you can see it's not a pure way this works. Part of the general fund and part of the racial balance fund will go to each of the buckets, while the other ones that are green all go into the operations fund. Okay? So these are the new funds, and this is how it's decided where something gets spent. The state decides, they have a chart of accounts that has every item listed in it that we would be spending money in, and so we'll make sure that when things are coded, expenses are coded, they go into one of these places. So the next slide will show you.
Is that, by the way, an official designation that we have non-operations in the operations fund?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Okay.
You can see, well, in there you can see what it is. So these, again, sticking with the orange and the purple, the orange at the top shows you those items that are from the education fund, or expenses will be out of the education fund, and then the purple are those that will be from the operations fund. So there you can see the non-operational items include construction and purchase of non-instructional equipment. So like if we had to buy custodial equipment or something like that, it would come out of the non-operational. Whoops, go back 1 second. I want to give everybody a chance to look at that a minute, just so you can see. It's pretty intuitive what is on this list. So we're hopeful that this will be an easy transition for everybody. Okay. So this shows you in a graph the difference between the education fund and the operations fund. So really, bottom line, we're all just one big organization. And so it doesn't really matter that there's 2 funds. We've got to set priorities based on the entire organization. And if you look at it as one piece, 72% of it goes to education and 28% goes to the operations. And we divided the purple part into separate pies so you could kind of see how we prioritized the funds that existed in the past. So capital projects, transportation, bus replacement, those are still priorities of the district, but they just aren't in their own fund anymore. So we pulled those out so you could see what's left over after you take those funds out. And in the operations fund, like general operations, is about $39 million. So first of all, we'll go to the education fund. And you already saw what the priorities are here, and these are basically the same levels of service that were in the general fund and racial balance fund last year. So what this shows you is about 93% of the education fund goes to pay for staff that work with students. So this could be teachers and classroom assistants, those people at the schools that are working directly with students. And then there's another piece that is the part that we send over to the Career Center to pay for students that participate in that program outside of their high school. And then the remainder is materials and supplies basically for the schools. So all of that is in the schools.
So Kathy, there was always, currently with the way that, or previously the way that we had budgets, there were always people in school buildings that were classified as administrators. Going forward, will they now be in this education fund?
There are some administrators that will be in the education fund and some that won't. That's true. But I'm going to just defer to Rosie for a minute. Principals and assistant principals?
Principals, assistant principals here.
Yeah.
School administration.
Yeah.
Guidance staff?
Yeah.
How were guidance staff previously,
Well,
were they identified as administrators?
oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, they're on the
Yes.
administrative salary
Yes.
schedule.
Yes, but they were just in the general fund with those other positions then.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
from time to time, people would say, well, you got a lot of administrators. And, but it was a false number because it included people working directly with students.
Right, and that is a tricky one because different districts do different, identify some positions
How are we
differently.
going to do it?
Some don't identify guidance counselors as administrators and some do.
How
So-
are we going to do it?
Well, it doesn't really, as far as this is concerned, it won't matter whether they're administrator or not. There's a place you account for them, guidance counselors get accounted like this. The administrative part is an HR component.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that the public gets records. They pull down information from the state website.
Yeah.
And they see people that are classified as administrators. And we know that they're in the buildings working every day directly with students. Is that problem going to go away?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because the salaries that are posted out there on the website will still identify them as they currently are. The funding will be in the proper location, but as far as the, because if they're identified as administrator now, they will still be identified as an administrator.
But I see to your point, if you look on slide 18 or 16, where you have the red buckets and the purple buckets, we'll just have to try to delineate that when we're talking, because it says school administration and then it has district or corporate administrations in the purple. So that's just for us, but then people won't care because the state has it in a category and we have them as administrators. So we can explain it locally, but it'll still show up that way, Steve.
I mean, it might be possible for us to identify, I mean, well, I know it's possible that we could identify who's in which bucket, you know. As far as what they look up on the state's website, they won't find that information. I doubt that it would show which bucket they're paid from. So, but we'll know, obviously.
But I think that's a conversation we can have, because everybody's going to have these two buckets. So maybe that's just a conversation with the state, how they categorize things, since now we're in these two buckets.
Okay. So next we'll go to the operations fund. And the operations fund has all these former components. So this one is $75.5 million. About 50% of this fund consists of the old funds that you're familiar with, the capital projects, expenditures, transportation, and bus replacement. And then the other half relates to the other operations of the school district. So on the next slide, I'll show you what that blue pie, how that's divided out. So that's about $39 million. And that is about 50% of this part of the budget represents payment for staff of GRILE, maintenance, facilities, all of those the Faith Center, other non-education fund salaries would come out of here. And then the remainder is, even though these items are paying for utilities at schools, custodial at schools, those are not considered educational funds, they're considered operational expenses. So those appear here as well. And those are fairly large chunks that make that part up. So now we'll flip to capital projects. So you have a 3-year capital projects plan, and we'll provide you with a copy of that, so you've got only those items that are over $10,000. It adds up to about $6.6 million of the, or you can go ahead and switch to the next slide. So of the $14.8 million, and you're basically looking at the blue section of this. Of that, about $6.6 million of it represents items that are over $10,000 and are capital in nature. So the other items that are on that pie, technology, building and equipment repair, equipment purchases. As we said before, we don't want to lose what the former capital projects fund process gave us. You know, it gave us a method to plan for 3 years all of these items, not just items that are over $10,000. So our plan right now is to continue to view it that way. So we have a plan that adds up to $14.8 million over the next 3 years, and you've seen a copy of that. Next is transportation, and the plan is to continue with the same service that we're providing today for transportation. And the next slide will show you the total budget is $17.1 million for transportation. And this budget, a good portion of this, as you can see, about 75% of this budget goes to pay for staff and fringe benefits as well. And that is for bus drivers, bus assistants, staff that work at the centers to help route students and those kind of things, and then their fringe benefits. Fuel represents about $1.6 million of the budget, and then parts is another $1 million. So those are large dollar amounts, but as you can see, it's the staffing that is the largest cost for transportation. Next is the bus replacement expense, and we have 299 buses in our fleet at a replacement cost of about $42 million. And this is what it would look like if we could replace every bus when they're 12 years old. So unfortunately, in 2019, we have 45 buses that are 12 years old. And we decided to stay with the amount that we've been typically spending for school buses. And so if we spend $4.1 million on buses, we'll buy 24 of those in 2019. So we'll get a little bit behind, but that has been the pattern because again, you know, we've got that pension bond neutrality thing hanging over our heads. And by 2022, though, the good news is the year where we only have to buy 5 buses, we will get caught up. And all of our buses will be 12 years old or newer by 2022. And then we already discussed the Museum of Art, so I think we can pass on that one. And then our debt funds, this is one area that didn't change in the process. The first 2 yellow lines represent the first 2 kinds of debt. So we actually have 3 debt funds. The first debt fund, the items are listed above the first yellow line. We're still paying for some renovations at New Tech. And, but the bulk of the loans in that category are loans that, like the one you approved tonight, the Common School Fund loan. So, and that's just been an ongoing priority for the district. And so we count on that, plan on that in our long-term debt plan, that will continue to exist. The second yellow line represents the referendum debt. So this is for the 2012 and 2016 referendums that were approved by the public. We have not borrowed all those funds yet. We will do another bond issue in 2019 for that. But the good news is the blue line shows you the tax rate of those 2 funds added together. We are below the rate that we promised to the public in the when we were out there with the 2016 referendum. We said our maximum rate would be 0.3028, and we expect to be at about 2.8 when we get the final budget order completed. The third item, the pension bond, I put that below the blue line because since that's tax neutral, that has no impact on the tax rate because we've cut somewhere else in order to pay for that. So in summary, the total, we restated 2018 so you could kind of get a feel for what would 2018 have looked like if it was also divided between education bucket and operations bucket. So in all, there's about a 3% increase in the total of those 2 areas, and then there's an increase in debt service repayment. In all, it's about a 4% increase in the total budget. And the tax rate's going to go up a little bit, slightly up, but again, within the rate that we promised the public it would be in. And if you look at your notice again, you'll see in column 2 on the notice, the total on there was $309,209,000, but we've got to take that pension bond neutrality out, the $3.3 million. So we'll be at $305,909, just as this slide says in the total there, $305,909. So I wanted to make sure you saw how we reconciled to that number. And then in the end, the takeaways here, we didn't really talk about enrollment. Enrollment's up just slightly up from last year. So in terms of how it affected our revenue estimates, we didn't plan for large revenue estimate or large enrollment increases to benefit the school funding formula, but if it would happen to go up more in 19, that will benefit our revenue. There's really not much change to the, there's no change to the impact of service that parents will see or the community will see. We'll still be doing the same things that we have been doing. We have a 2% revenue increase we estimate. Debt funds are where we promised. The bus replacement plan's on track to meet that 12-year replacement schedule. And the overall budget increase is 3% at this time. So-
3% and just under 3 cents per
Yes,
100.
yes. And the next steps with the budget will be then, the budget is, it says to September 25th, but it's actually there today. So this sheet that I've been talking to you about is available out on the website. And like I said, it's misleading though, unfortunately, because the information that's required to be provided doesn't exactly match what we know that the final outcome will be. Then we will have the public hearings on October the 8th, and on October 22nd, the adoption. So I'll be happy to, oh, and I'd like to thank Rosie Shipman. She did an outstanding job helping us with the budget this year, and appreciate her. Glad she brought the safety net with her.
Good job under pressure, coming up with that. Hey, if we go back to slide 34, so when it talks about the tax rate, that's the tax rate of the budget that you talked about before, but then also the other tax funds,
Yeah, that
capital
would,
projects. So what does the state do now? Is there a new operations fund tax rate?
yes.
And that's sort of the combination of what used to be capital projects,
Right.
transportation, bus replacement.
Yep. So
Okay.
when, on that
And is
slide,
that-
the slide where it showed the maximum of the $43 million, the property tax slide that we had, that is, what they did was they took, it's on slide 10, they actually took the total maximum levy allowed for all those individual funds. You want to go ahead and go back, slide 10? So the maximum levy for, one more, forward, yeah. The top line, that maximum levy 2018, that includes all those funds, is what that is. So that's got capital
Okay,
projects.
so they have a formula
Yeah.
for the maximum allowed levy.
Yeah.
And then
but
from that, you look at your assessed valuation and you come up with the tax rate.
Right, right.
Gotcha.
So we have to estimate what the assessed value is going to be, and then consider, now, you know, on top of this will be the debt funds. So the debt funds are also in that tax rate. So it's operations fund plus debt funds are in that tax rate.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not in the levy, though,
On this,
the debt fund.
not right
Right.
there. No,
Right.
no,
It's just in the total tax rate there at the end.
right.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So basically, our tax rate is going up because the state allows us to increase the levy by 3.4%.
That's part of it. Part of it, it's part of the overall formula too that considers how much cash you have on hand and all that. So it's a, you know, like, for instance, the portion that's related to, of course, the debt, we know that that's going to stay fairly level, really,
Right.
based on, you know, that we're making it stay there. But yes, because the state does allow this growth factor to go up, that does cause that rate to go up. But we didn't go up the whole 3.4%. We're up about 3%.
Yeah,
So.
okay.
But again, none of this is for sure until we're done with when the state board, or the Department of Local Government Finance gets done with their work on December 31st this year. And then we'll know what the answers are, and we'll give you, tell you what we thought compared to how it turned out. But what we're trying to show you is, to the best of our knowledge, how we think it's going to turn out.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good job. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Our next meeting will be Monday, October 8th, and that, of course, will include the public hearing for the budget and the bus replacement plan and the capital projects plan. So that leaves member comments. Steve? No?
Thank you.
Tom?
No comment.
I just wanted to mention that I did attend
a Latinos Count breakfast on our last Friday, and that is Steve's organization. He's the executive director of. And I guess what impressed me most, Steve, was your epitome of servant leadership. The program, even though you are the director, was all about the students and about the funders and that type of thing. And that just really impressed me most at the breakfast, that it wasn't about you at all, but it was about those that you serve, servant leadership. And I found this little quote that reminded me of that. You don't inspire your teammates by showing them how amazing you are. You inspire them by showing them how amazing they are. And that's exactly what you've done. So, very impressive.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Very briefly, many would say that football is all about the rivalry, but not always. I was at the Wayne Southside football game a couple weeks back, and something special happened. The rivalry stopped, and Wayne and Southside came together to remember a young lady who recently passed, who was a student at Wayne High School, the daughter of current principal Swinford of Southside. It was a moment of unity. It was a moment of understanding. It was strong and powerful.
Thanks, Jordan. Dr. Robinson?
Nothing at this time, but I'll have some other information later.
Okay. So there was an article recently in Forbes magazine that I wanted to mention, and it was talking about whether over the last 15 years, or maybe 17 years, I guess, of standardized testing since No Child Left Behind, what it's really accomplished. Teachers, of course, have repeatedly said that the tests really don't measure what they claim to measure, and that it's causing curriculum to be narrowed, to focus on testing and focus on the subjects that are tested. And so there seems to be a kind of a, and the point of the article was a little bit of a growing consensus that, shocker, teachers were actually correct, that the big standardized test is not helping, not working, and not measuring what it claims to measure. So, I know that our schools are graded on how well they do on standardized tests, but as a board member, I would prefer to ignore them and make sure that that we are focused on educating students and providing them with opportunities and experiences that are going to serve them well later in life, and the test scores will be what the test scores will be. But I thought that was interesting, that article in Forbes. So, that's all I have. Do we have a?
Move for adjournment, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Jordan. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the microphone is now open for anyone who